So I guess we'll go ahead and get started now. So thanks everyone for joining the quarterly project update call. We have three different types of quarterly calls. So once per month, one is focused just on infrastructure operators. So not everyone has to join. It's just for information for those running infrastructure on the network, tips, troubleshooting, debugging. One of the calls is a topic call run by our community leads, Nelson. The topic changes from quarter to quarter. It's aimed to focus on whatever is kind of most important or kind of the hot thing going on in live peer. And then there's this one, the quarterly project update, where I'll basically use this as a presentation opportunity to fill everyone in on what's been going on, but also do Q&A, talk about whatever people want to know, whatever's interesting to people. We are recording this, and we are, so it'll be uploaded later, and we are streaming this at livepeer.com/TV. So note that if you do participate, you're being recorded and you're on a live stream. If you just want to watch, you can drop off the active call and watch over there. And if no one has shared the link to that in Discord, feel free to do so right now, just in case others want to join. All right, so what I want to cover today, a quick reminder, LivePeer is building the world's open video infrastructure. That's our mission. We have an open transcoding network and kind of ingest and video processing network right now, but certainly as part of our open source software and enabling all sorts of live streaming use cases in the future, we look to expand beyond that and fulfill this mission of building the world's open video infrastructure. For today's agenda, I'll do a quick kind of summary of Q1 highlights and what's been going on in LivePeer in the last 3 months since the last one of these overview calls. Then I want to talk about what you guys need to know about participating in LivePeer's open governance, and focus on proposals and voting. Try and stay away from some of the theoretical and abstract discussions we've had in the past, and actually focused on the practical tips of what you need to know about how things are going to work, how you participate, et cetera, because it's exciting. This is coming up and everyone's going to be able to participate. And then we'll do an update on something that I know everyone's interested in, the work we've been doing to drive adoption to the LivePeer network, and a product update on the LivePeer Transcoding API. And then some time for Q&A, and we can discuss whatever people want. And as I mentioned, I know more people may have joined. I am presenting. I can see my presentation, but I can't see everyone else. I want people to chime in. I want this to be a group discussion. I want people to ask questions as we go. So don't hesitate to just interrupt me or shout out at any time. Not a problem. Great. Okay, so LivePeer Q1 highlights. What have we done in the last 3 months in the LivePeer ecosystem? Some network stats. So we have 2,573 active delegators as of today. That's 140 more than last quarter. So it's actually not tremendous growth in terms of percentage, but it is a kind of good base level community that has remained actively engaged and participating in the network. We've grown our orchestrator count by 18 up to 43 active orchestrators. Reminder that there's 100 active orchestrator slots available right now. So anyone who wants to try running an orchestrator on the network and competing for fees for the test streams that are running through, now's a good time to do that. There's very low cost of entry in terms of LivePeer token. In order to get an active slot, you could get an active slot with 0.000000001 LivePeer token, though it would be difficult for your to be selected to perform much work at that amount. If you are interested in running an orchestrator but are unsure about how you'll get enough stake delegated towards you to start performing some work, don't hesitate to reach out in the Discord. Probably possible for those in the community to help out with a little bit of stake towards you in order to test your active setup and get started. So definitely encourage more active orchestrators. Our participation rate is just about to hit 67%. It's like 66.995 or something right now, up 2% from 3 months ago. The the kind of important number in the protocol is that we're above 50%, which means that the number of new tokens issued each day decreases instead of increases. And it's trending downwards. One thing that we have seen as that has increased is the participation rate hasn't grown quite as fast as it has previously. So it'll be interesting to see as it gets closer to single digit or teens annual kind of inflation percentage. If people unstake and this participation rate drops down or not. I think that'll also be a big governance topic that we can talk about later in future calls using the governance framework as to whether the community deems it necessary to kind of adjust any incentives or parameters via a protocol update in order to keep the incentives in place to bootstrap the network.
Hey Doug, maybe this is a chance to ask a question. Just as interested around these delegators, it says the absolute number's gone up by 140. Do we have any stats on how many people are like stopping being delegators? So maybe it's like that 140 is plus 200 but minus 60, or maybe that 140 is pure gain.
Great question. So yes, it's possible to know. No, I don't have this number in front of me. I wonder, Adam, maybe
I wouldn't
in the
expect you
that's
to.
something quick to access. If it's not, we could just follow up in the Discord channel.
Yeah, that's something I can easily fetch for you, Chris.
Yeah, typically when we've seen
Thanks,
this, we've
Adam.
seen. Yeah, I'll make a guess. I would guess that it is on the order of kind of like you described, maybe plus 200 minus 60. That's totally a guess. But as we've looked in the past at, like I also don't have the total all-time individual delegator accounts on here, but I would guess it's probably closer to 3,500 individual accounts have delegated. So it just gives you a sense of kind of the retention and total numbers versus what's active right now. Cool, good question. And then some of the supply numbers. So we've actually passed 20 million live peer tokens, a round number, a little bit symbolic, because if you remember at Genesis, there were 10 million live peer tokens. And I think, a little over 5 million of them ended up kind of as part of the Merkle mine, distributed across all Ethereum accounts. And, many of those thousands, I think, there was over 1,000 to 1,500 users who, from those accounts, who kind of activated and began participating. But much of those tokens are kind of still sitting in Ethereum accounts. And so at the time, you'd say, oh, it's almost 50% of the Genesis tokens. But now that we passed 20 million tokens, well, that's down to below 25%, and it will continue to decrease. So again, part of the design for the token inflation and the incentives were that this network would truly be operated and that the tokens would be held by those who are actively participating. And you see that now with over 15 million of the tokens held by those who are actively participating. The numbers actually 13.6 million are kind of currently staked and participating, but there's some amount of tokens held by those who are active that just might not be bonded at the current moment as well. And then current mintable tokens. So 15,500 new tokens created this round. Next round that will decrease because we're over 67% inflation rate. So still quite a few tokens coming into the protocol every day. Cool. Payments and usage of the network. So there's been 794 redeemed probabilistic micropayments tickets. These are the technical mechanism for getting paid on the network and earning money. This has resulted in just a tad under 10 ETH worth of fees earned. So, in the grand scheme of things, we're talking between $1,000 and $2,000 worth of fees. That's not a huge number relative to the aspirations of live peers impacts on the video infrastructure market, but it's also not a trivially small number in terms of those who are running infrastructure on the network and testing their ability to earn these fees and see ETH end up in their accounts. If you look at the orchestrator dashboard, you'll see that many of the active nodes have earned a little bit of ETH, which is a good kind of a testing and acceptance milestone for the phase that we're at. So, a lot of this has come from individuals testing. A lot of it has come from the stream tester that kind of the core team is running. We'll continue to run that, as certainly reliability of the public network is one of the top, priorities right now, and that requires a bunch of testing. It requires all the operators on the network to be kind of helping debug, report bugs, report issues, getting under the hood on what's going on with their own nodes, if they're successful, not successfully transcoding video. And the kind of the best observed measure of usage is these tickets cached and these fees earned. Cool. Okay, so releases. Streamflow got released in January. I think that was right around the time of the last call. We released a new Explorer. That Explorer has 3-box integration, so people can put identities on their accounts and actually have a profile rather than just a Ethereum address. The Explorer's been updated to show the fees that nodes are earning. And it's going to have some updates for governance coming soon that we can look at later in this call. Streamflow, the big scaling update, from a research perspective, it attempted to solve all the problems that would need to be solved for live peer to be scalable, reliable, cost effective. The good news is there's still ways to go in terms of like client implementations to make it as reliable as it might need to be for enterprise, for example. But it's working quite well. All the kind of many of the theoretical research problems in terms of scaling on Ethereum today have been solved, and the micropayments are working really nicely. So this is good. We have the right base to build on to actually meet real-world scaled usage. We put up a website at livepeer.com. The homepage of the project has been and continues to be livepeer.org, where we can talk about the project's mission, the open source components, the open network components, the protocol, the token, all the complexities around something of the scale of LivePeer. That all lives at livepeer.org. But we put up livepeer.com to talk specifically to the existing video industry. We could hide the complexity of crypto and blockchain and running nodes and all the complex operations. And instead, we can just communicate the video value propositions to scale video applications today and have the right products and APIs and entry points and docs for them. And so, we have a home for that now at livepeer.com, and it will be iterated on. There's even a product update coming later in this meeting too that'll talk about some of the product being built around that. So this is a good step for the demand side. And then recent releases, our open governance process. So we published a roadmap proposal, a founder statement, an updated LivePeer improvement process. I'm going to talk about that later in this call. But this is now something that everyone can participate in, and they can have clear and transparent rules for how it works. And everyone has the power to make proposals, to vote on proposals, to enact change in LivePeer. So this is really exciting. There's a lot of not contentious, but good hot debate around some of the mechanics and parameters, so that the whole community can be involved in arriving at the way this works for LivePeer. So we'll talk a little bit about that on this call too. Cool. And the other thing that's happening is, I hope everyone is staying healthy and safe with the global pandemic going on right now. It's affecting everyone. It's going to affect everyone, and it's way bigger and kind of more impactful and important than anything work specific or LivePeer specific. But one thing that is happening in society as a result of this is the rise of video and the rise of live streaming. It's a way that people are learning, connecting with one another, doing work, getting entertainment, and it's growing tremendously. And as a result, the infrastructure for live streaming is kind of under assault. Zoom is a video communications platform. That's not exactly the type of video that LivePeer transcoding enables directly right now, but it's still a significant drain on video infrastructure. They're warning investors that the cost of operating Zoom has grown during this period, has grown so much as they've grown from 10 million to 200 million users, that even though they have this tremendous user growth, their costs are accelerating. They should expect, financial impacts as a result of that. Similarly, and by the way, one thing I would address, even though LivePeer is not the sort of infrastructure that a chat application like Zoom would run on for the chat, its infrastructure could be heavily used by a service like Zoom for broadcasting the results of calls, or the calls out to the public while they're running a chat concurrently, or using all the GPUs on LivePeer's network for some of the video intensive work under the hood, like compositing and kind of laying the videos on top of one another. So just want to clarify that, because sometimes people get confused around whether LivePeer could power like Google Hangouts or Zoom directly. Another example that we're seeing here is the European Union has asked Netflix and YouTube to switch to streaming standard definition instead of HD, because the infrastructure can't handle all the bandwidth required to deliver those streams. This is the exact sort of thing that transcoding is used for converting videos from HD down to lower definitions to deliver to users on regardless of their connection speed. So these are some examples of this strain on the infrastructure. I think you've probably seen use cases and examples of how streaming is growing. So schools and institutions are shifting to holding classes online. Entertainment programs and learning programs are asking for virtual payments while they're streaming their programs instead of doing in-person classes. Basically, like, the summary of this is that all the growth in streaming that we thought would occur over the next 2 to 4 years is actually happening right now. It's happening, in 2 to 4 weeks as a result of the global kind of social distancing. Existing video infrastructure is under tremendous strain and costs are skyrocketing to use it. And so, LivePeer's mission of building the world's open video infrastructure in a way that's as cost effective and efficient as possible is, and peer-to-peer and decentralized as possible, is what the world needs right now. I think the world needs what LivePeer is doing today. And so I think LivePeer community has an opportunity to be flexible and adaptive to these new and growing use cases that are emerging. We have an opportunity to fit in, and we have an opportunity to help. I think we have this kind of nascent video infrastructure network. We're looking for people building new video applications that can help the world right now. We have the resources to sponsor and help these offerings, to help them get live, to help them integrate our services. And so LivePeer wants to help. And if everyone on this call knows people who are building these new applications, or they know existing applications that are struggling with their costs or their scaling, please connect them to the LivePeer community so we can be flexible and adapt and help them and create some success and help out the world right now. So it's kind of, I think that's a kind of big recognition of what's happening, and that's how LivePeer can fit in and play a part and help.
I'll just jump in here and just say, like, obviously everyone's lives are being kind of impacted by what's happening, but I just think it's amazing that the team and the community and the project is still progressing. So bravo to everyone. It's really, really nice to see.
Thanks. Yeah, it's I think by being a fully kind of distributed organization and a kind of a global community to begin with, we're really well positioned to keep pressing forward and helping in different ways. So I've also felt that we're far more resilient than we would be if it was just a small team in one location that had to disrupt everything in order to keep pressing forward. Okay, so on to topic number 2, a practical update on LivePeer governance, and specifically talking about voting and proposals. Cool. So, what can LivePeer governance enable? Basically, we need a way to make updates to the LivePeer protocol code and its parameters in a way that's not just controlled by core developers. We need to have ways to make updates to LivePeer's economics and economic incentives, if necessary, for the protocol to be successful. And anytime you're updating something that has to do with someone's economics, you want the whole community to come to consensus on those changes, rather than it just being a small group that dictates economic updates. And recognizing that there's going to be governance in place that allows the whole community to participate, you need mechanisms to make updates to that governance process itself. And so what I'm not going to go into right now is all the background, the philosophy, why governance, why is it necessary, what are the values of the project that should be kept in mind. That's all covered in the founder statement, the roadmap proposal, the educational materials for reference. If you need to know where to find those, I would check the LivePeer blog. Some of the recent posts link to all the materials that are out there. There's also a community governance channel in the Discord chat and a topic in the forum. So there's a lot of background material. What I want to do today is kind of give a summary of how governance will work and talk about the practical ways you'll participate. So for the first milestone, basically what we want is we want to create a very well-defined process that everyone can follow to know how to participate and how governance changes can be enacted to begin with. And the idea is to keep this process simple and accessible so that everyone can understand it without too much mental overhead and can get involved and know the rules of the game. And we've kind of the crux of that process are two things. There's a pre-processing step called the Live Peer Improvement Proposal process, or LIPs. And this is a way that we can be sure that people make proposals that are well-formed, that are votable, that people can discuss and come to consensus around, following kind of just social norms and constructs, right? And then people can use that pre-processing step to create proposals, and then they can use a voting or polling application to vote on these proposals. And if the proposal, and this will be accessible in the Explorer and through the LivePeer command line interface. And then if these proposals get voted on and these votes pass them, then the core developers will execute the proposals. They may have to implement them, but hopefully they've been implemented by the time of voting, if they're really being carried forward by a champion. But the core developers will execute the proposals. And that's milestone one. But the idea is that with these simple tools, these socially agreed upon processes, you can use them to extend the governance process going forward and make it binding, so you don't actually rely on core developers to implement and execute these proposals, and you don't rely on any manual actions or interventions that can introduce more risk or controversy or challenges going forward. And it can yield a truly community-driven, decentralized process. Just because there's multiple milestones and there's iteration doesn't mean it's a long time before we can get to the end state. It just means we're starting with putting the simple building blocks in place for everyone to participate, understand the rules of the game, and have the tools they need to extend it going forward, and then we can move to extend it. So that's the summary of what we're trying to accomplish with this first milestone. We are many weeks into the process, and we've actually almost achieved this. We are maybe 2-ish weeks away from being able to open up the first vote. So it's pretty exciting. To give a quick overview of these tools, the Live Peer Improvement Proposal process you can view and read about in this GitHub repository linked below. It's essentially a series of proposals that are first open as GitHub issues, and then after they're discussed and reach a certain state, they can be submitted as pull requests into the repository. And it's just a kind of a clearly defined process for how you document them, how you discuss them, and the states that they move through to move from being discussed to being candidate proposals to being voted on to being accepted or rejected. There's a nice summary of this process that Gavin from Figment Networks, who I think is on the call, wrote about. You can read about it on the Figment blog as well. So this is kind of the pre-processing step. It's modeled after the Ethereum improvement proposal process. And there's many projects that use similar mechanisms. The second piece here is the polling application. I'm not going to walk through the full application. It's being built right now, but I just wanted to share one screenshot. So this is the LivePeer Explorer. There is a voting tab added over to the left side there. And if you click on that, you'll be able to see a list of the open proposals for vote. Anyone can create a poll if they want, and then they'll be able to vote through their web browser and their MetaMask or crypto or Web3 enabled crypto wallet on these proposals, and they'll be able to vote yes or no. And this app will show a nice summary of the current votes. It'll show the kind of quorum and participation requirements as to whether the vote has enough votes to be valid and whether or not it's passing. And that's basically the kind of the core of the application initially. The way that voting works, and this is being discussed through the LIP process right now, it's that when a poll gets created, there's going to be a 10-day voting period. You vote yes or no. Anyone can create a poll, and initially it will cost 100 live peer token to create a poll in order to prevent spam and to make sure people have some skin in the game when they're actually asking everyone in the community to spend time doing work, reviewing, and voting. The voting app will use the graph in order to count up the total stake voting for or against a proposal, so voting yes or no. So each token that you've staked represents essentially one vote. Orchestrators, when they vote, they carry the total stake that is delegated to them by default. But any delegator can show up and they can vote however they'd like and override what their orchestrator voted on. So you can essentially everyone can vote with their own stake, but if you just want your orchestrator to vote on your behalf because you're not following the details or paying attention or you trust them or whatnot, then you don't have to show up and vote if you're a delegator. This is the high level. So at the before I get into that, just at the end of the voting period, the 10 days will end on a specific block. The votes for or against will be added up. And if there's enough vote in favor, then it's considered passed and the core team will execute the outcome of that vote. So how do you know if something has enough vote to pass? What does that mean? And that question is kind of what's been involved in a big ongoing discussion. It's what are the initial parameters of voting? There's kind of two big open questions right now. The questions that are still open that people are still sharing opinions on. One is what type of quorum are we using? And when I say quorum, what I mean is how much stake has to participate in a poll in order for that poll to be considered valid. If only one LPT voted yes on a proposal, that clearly wouldn't be enough to pass a proposal. We want some significant percentage of the network to at least show up and weigh in on an opinion, weigh in with an opinion. And so the question here is, there's really like two alternate kind of things that are worth considering as quorum. One is, should it be the percent of stake that shows up to vote? So let's just use the example of what was proposed, 33%. Is a vote valid if 33% of the stake shows up to vote, whether they vote yes or no? And that kind of matches the traditional definition of quorum and what was originally proposed. The other kind of mechanism, and it's not the same, it's not a quorum, but it's I forget the term, but it's a different term, but it's also applicable to kind of quorums in decentralized systems, which is, instead of saying the minimum amount of stake that needs to show up, define the minimum amount of stake that must vote yes in order to pass. So using the same number, 33%, it would say a proposal can't pass unless at least 33% of the total stake has voted yes. And these are just two different definitions that have different implications and different scenarios that play out, and different kind of weird quirks that play out depending on how many people show up to vote yes or no. And there's a whole bunch of discussion going on in the the LIP 16 issue linked to down at the bottom that anyone can review and weigh in with opinions on as well. The second kind of question is, well, assuming we agree on one of these two mechanisms for quorum, what should the initial value of quorum be? And initially it was proposed to use 20% of stake must show up to vote. There's quite a bit of feedback on these calls, governance calls, Discord, the forum, et cetera, that that felt too low, especially because orchestrators with a lot of delegated stake could come pretty close to hitting that number already. And so it was updated, and the current proposal was 33% of proposed stake must show up to participate, but there's been calls for at least 50%. There's different thinking around this. It's, well, initially all this voting is non-binding. There's no incentives baked into the protocol to vote or not vote yet. We want a simple process coming out of the gate that can be used to extend or modify this or introduce more complex things later, like penalties or incentives for voting or not voting. And so we wanted to keep the bar at something that was achievable, where everyone paying attention could show up and actually have the ability to impact, and then you could use that to move these values later. So this is a big discussion that people care a lot about. I don't think we want to get into a big debate here on this particular call right now, or have the time to. But a lot of people have been active. Does anyone want to weigh in or ask questions on this particular topic?
I would just agree that going to the LIP issue is probably the best place to learn about what we're talking about in more detail, and also contribute if you feel like it. So just to agree with Doug.
I would just add, Doug, that so an interesting event that happened recently was the Digix DAO dissolution of their DAO, and they had a mechanism which was similar to the second quorum style that you list on this slide, with some interesting kind of consequences from that. So we don't have to discuss it here, but would be an interesting conversation to have. I'll check out the LIP.
Well, what was it? Did they need like 50% to vote yes to dissolution it, or 66% to vote yes to dissolve the? Yeah.
So all I'm saying is that they would need a kind of like global minimum stake to like appear, right? And then of the people that appeared, the proposal would pass if like 50% of the people who appeared voted yes. So in other words, it's like the second version of what you have in the slide. Now the various edge cases that resulted in was that like the founders who were whales, had sort of disproportional control over votes, even though they had pledged not to vote in that particular vote. So there's like an edge case there. And then what else? Oh, the vote was like totally decided by one person at the end of the day. But that's not that's not a knock on your proposal here. It's just what happened in that particular case. But we can discuss more.
Right. Cool. Yeah, great kind of learning opportunity for us to include in the commentary for anyone following along with this. We'll take a deeper look at that. Great. And yeah, thanks to everyone who's actively participating in that discussion across all the channels. It's kind of great to get all the proposals and information and examples out there, because people keep surfacing, new weird edge cases or things to consider that are really helpful and arriving at something that'll be a good first shot for live here. I do suspect that, again, we have a kind of small but highly engaged community. We have the whole orchestrator group that are kind of really active and participating in live here. And I do suspect that, when there are important upgrades and, contentious topics that are being debated, that just through these social mechanisms alone at this early phase, we will be able to get that group that represents a lot of the stake through the delegation to weigh in and vote, right? It's using the CLI on their orchestrator node, they can quickly weigh in and carry the vote of their delegators. And so I do think that using kind of simple, accessible first pass tools will allow the community to get to the next milestone of actually making these binding and using the mechanisms that may be a little more complex or harder to understand, but solve for some of the problems after we have kind of the simple, straightforward, understandable process in place for everyone to be able to participate. Cool. Okay. So moving on. Anything else? Any other questions or comments on governance before I move on? No. Okay. So the other big topic, something that people always ask about, what are we doing to drive adoption? Who's using LivePeer? Who's going to use LivePeer? We said this year is going to be all about showing the proof and showing the impact and driving real world usage now that Streamflow is live. So happy to give everyone an update on that. First of all, some good news is that just on the technical side, we have integrations now with 2 top media servers. Wowza is a big, kind of highly used but proprietary media server. We have an open source integration, but someone would have to be a paying Wowza user in order to use LivePeer. But it's good because there's hundreds of thousands of Wowza instances out there, and Wowza users who are interested in testing or trying LivePeer have a path to being able to do so. But I'm really excited about the technical integration that we have with Mist Server, which is an open source media server, and they actually built an integration, and it's going to be open sourced. As they kind of put the finishing touches on it, it's ready, and this is really exciting because it'll create kind of a fully open sourced path for anyone who wants the full features of a mature media server when they're building a streaming application, but be able to use LivePeer's scalable infrastructure for video processing, transcoding, and scaling to have a great path to do so. So this is really good in terms of the opportunities that it opens up. But as far as the actual kind of end users and customers that want to use the LivePeer network, I think there's kind of 2 paths to thinking about this. So one is kind of the Web3 world, the new decentralized video applications that are going to look new and different and embed economics and be really exciting beyond anything we've ever seen before. This is really exciting, but these apps don't necessarily exist at scale today. And so what we need to do in order to capture these types of opportunities, and by the way, I'll clarify, like the apps shown on here are not active LivePeer network users yet, but they're the types of Web3 enabled applications like DTube, DLive, Peppo, things like what Decent Partners proposed for a public benefit broadcast network built on Web3 technologies. Saya released kind of Skynet support where their kind of content delivery network can support video segments, but they need video enabled features for apps to build on top that LivePeer can provide. So these sorts of things require public network reliability, and Streamflow gives us the great base. But before many of these services would switch off of their centralized providers, they would need to see LivePeer's reliability meet and live up to those standards. And we're getting there. We're getting pretty close. We've actually achieved it in controlled environments where we're running LivePeer on specific infrastructure. But to get it working on the public network where we're failing over to all these nodes around the world that may or may not be running GPUs, just requires some more testing iteration on the client software itself. And this is where everyone operating the network can help by looking at their logs, running test streams through their own orchestrators and transcoders, reporting back on bugs they're seeing, reporting when they're failing over, trying to run better infrastructure, and seeing that they're retaining work successfully, like the nodes on the networks that are earning a bunch of the fees. So this is work we can all do together, but we're getting close and excited to lean into these opportunities. But to reiterate, kind of the bad news is, the dollars that are flowing through LivePeer public network today, or the ETH, I should say, that's flowing through LivePeer public network today, is not yet coming from scaled Web3 applications like we want it to. I think we have every opportunity to. I'm excited about that, and we've talked with many of these, and they're excited about trying it out when it's reliable enough. But this is the work we all have to do together to get there. But so on the other side, kind of the non-Web3 side, this is where actually our company, LivePeer Inc., can play a big role. And this is kind of the traditional Web2 opportunities that don't understand anything about crypto or blockchain or even decentralization or peer-to-peer. What they care about is scalable, reliable, cost-effective video infrastructure. And a lot of the work that kind of LivePeer Inc. is doing is to kind of put up the APIs and the products that abstract all this complexity away and make it really easy for these Web2 applications to use the LivePeer network. So, good news on this side, especially with the rise of live streaming right now, we're seeing a real rise in inbound interest and response to our outbound kind of traditional business development, resulting in tests and pilots from kind of new and existing streaming apps. So things like online only conferences and events, religious streaming, fitness streaming, education. I really, really want these pilots and tests to go successfully, and then I want them to be using the public network as long as it's okay with their application. That's our priority and our goal. The whole point is to drive adoption to the public network. And so we're building the tools and platforms to enable that. I'm going to kick it over to Jen, who is a senior product manager with us, who is working on products for these Web2 types of customers, to kind of give an overview of that product.
Cool, thanks. I don't have slides, so you can stop sharing the screen if you want, Doug, briefly, sure, so people can see my face. Hey, everyone. Like Doug said, I'm the senior product manager at LivePeer, and my focus is on LivePeer's video products. So the goal of my role is to be one of the people that helps find, our product market fit for those video products. That means what video products or features does the market demand? Where is the existing gap? Let's build those things. And the first known gap that we've been building towards is live transcoding at an affordable price. So as the LivePeer, founders and business development and me, as we talk to more potential customers, like the people in the industries Doug just listed, like education, people streaming classes, church, things like that, we've discovered that a lot of those potential users, they want interacting with a affordable transcoding network to be abstracted a little bit for them. They want to develop against a LivePeer API. It's more common when you see other video transcoding services in the traditional Web2 marketplaces. They're just here's an API and here's a unique identifying key that gives you access to the API. So we've started building that. The goals of the LivePeer API product are to make LivePeer live transcoding just easier to integrate with. We want to give video developers a straightforward ingest URL. The idea of pools of broadcasters can be kind of confusing. They want a simple interface to establish video transcoding resolutions and rendition settings, just like literally a screen where they can click around and pick those resolutions and settings. And they want a straightforward URL to play back those transcoded streams at the different resolutions. Things that just really straightforward. A lot of the people who will end up using LivePeer transcoding services, even big players, some of them are video engineers, and some of them are people that are really entrepreneurial and thought of a cool product that needs video transcoding. And they're not necessarily hardcore video engineers. So the more we can abstract and make easier the integration with the LivePeer network, the easier for these folks, the easier to onboard. They'll have the experience of oh, LivePeer just works. So yeah, as I was saying, these software engineers who will use our API, they don't really need to know about the concept of broadcasters and orchestrators or even about cryptocurrency payments. The B and O selection, that can be handled like behind the scenes programmatically with software that LivePeer Inc. has built. And then the payments by those video software developers can happen off-chain directly to LivePeer Inc. So first, like none of this, this could happen on a private network, public network. We want to get it all working on the public network. But first, we're building and putting early API users on a private deployment of the LivePeer network with payments exclusively happening off-chain. The reason that this step is essential because there's just less variables. 100% of the infrastructure is trustworthy. And it allows for like the perfect quote unquote API user experience. Very quickly thereafter, we want LivePeer Inc. will start directing backup transcoding work to the public network. So the primary transcoding of those video users can still happen on the private network deployment. We'll have that reliability, but we'll start sending backup transcoding work to the public network. LivePeer Inc. will pay for that work in ETH on behalf of our clients. We want to start driving demand to the public network and start getting metrics that we can surface back to users about how reliable the public network is. And eventually, both primary transcoding and backup transcoding can happen for many, many enterprise customers on the public network. To start, LivePeer will likely pay for that work in ETH on behalf of our clients who have paid LivePeer Inc. in US dollars. There's also some product ideas floating around in my head about building like a simple user interface for video developers who can easily top up their own wallets to pay network fees. We're still learning about how comfortable people are with that. But this is the path we're trying to get to drive demand on the public network. Create an API that abstracts a lot of the complex parts of the LivePeer live transcoding video network. Take away the idea of cryptocurrency from those users. Then start driving backup transcoding traffic to the public network, real work that the supply side can get paid for. Then start driving the bulk of transcoding work that the API provides to the public network. Another idea that we've been talking about is getting to, in the future, everything I've talked to is short and medium term happening soon. But further along, we want to get to the point where there's the idea of like LivePeer transcoding in a box. What open source media servers and software, plus the LivePeer API, plus maybe a simple user interface to top off your own wallet. What can be packaged together and downloaded by like an entrepreneurial user who's not afraid to interact directly with the LivePeer network without an enterprise contact? What sort of packaged software can we provide that user so they can just get started with LivePeer transcoding out of the box on the public network? I'd love to see us get there, but first we got to take those early steps building the API and driving enterprise traffic to the public network. So if you have any questions, we can certainly talk about it on this call, but also Doug had on the slide, I'm at Jen on Discord, and feel free to ping me in public channels or DM. I'm really excited that the video enterprise product work is starting to merge in a more fruitful way with products that will be available on the public network. Doug?
Thanks, Jen. So that's actually the end of the prepared content. So it's time for Q&A. So I guess first would be a good question. Does anyone have any questions for Jen on API product or kind of the payments and usage abstraction layers we're putting up?
Hi, I have a question. Like, how long do you think like this might take? Like, any kind of approximate timelines regarding how long this might take? Like each of those steps.
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, so certainly for that, we're actively have customers testing the private deployment of the API right now, that first step, proving to us that this can be reliable. I'd love to see by the end of this quarter backup traffic being transcoded on the public network. And then the following quarter, that would be like Q3. I think if we're aggressive, which we always have been at LivePeer, there's potential for us to see clients with primary and backup transcoding in a meaningful way happening on the public network. Doug, do you agree with that, boss?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, it's our like I said, the API is up and running now for pilots, and there's customers testing it and using it. And good clarification too is every potential user is totally different in terms of their requirements. Like some are great fits and actively excited about the cost benefits that the public network brings to them. And they're not like choosing pilot on private versus public. We're just trying to deliver them a good, reliable experience that they are integrated with LivePeer and like using LivePeer. And as soon as public network reliability can handle their, first their backups and their production, it kicks over there because that's the goal. So I think we're hoping to see this really soon. We're ready and doing the work. And again, this is kind of just the traditional Web 2 world. In the kind of Web3 world, anyone who shows up and is ready to run their infrastructure and fund it with ETH and start using the public network, and that's open and available to use today.
Awesome, thank you. And like any any customers or the people who are testing this out, who you can name publicly or not right now?
Yeah, this one's kind of a tricky one for me because like I have no hesitance to name anyone who reaches out to us for a pilot, but they're reaching out to a company. They have their own kind of their own privacy and roadmap, and don't want to reveal what they're doing or anything. So I'm not going to name specifics, but what I'd recommend that you do is maybe in Discord look at what people have described when they reach out in public channels that they're building, and you'll see people who show up and say, "Oh, I'm building a religious streaming application, looking to take advantage of what I read about on LivePeer," or "Oh, I'm building an online virtual events platform." And you may be able to get in touch with them, ask what they're building. I'm sure they'd be happy to share the information. It's just kind of until it's public, until it's launched. I don't want to step on anyone's toes. And we're first and foremost looking for a publicly marketable case study that proves LivePeer's impact and disruptiveness to a scaled customer. So we'll share as soon as there's a successful story to tell.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, understand.
Actually, just following up on that one, it's a good question. Do the people who are reaching out to potentially work with LivePeer, are they invited on these calls? Like, it would be great to hear from some of them if some of them were willing to come and publicly and openly say, talk about what it is they're doing. Like, of course, only if they're willing. I wouldn't want to force anyone, but just some of them. Yeah, some of them I added as invites to this call. I don't see the list. I'm not sure if anyone joined. Some of them are almost oblivious to the community and token and blockchain and crypto aspects of LivePeer, and kind of by design, because they are, not, I don't know the right word, if it's scared or intimidated or uncertain of that, but are very interested in the value propositions of the video transcoding network. And I don't know if whoever is in contact with them from LivePeer has extended the invite to a call like this, because it would be pretty far into what they are looking for. But certainly as the relationships grow and they're integrated and they learn more, it'd be great to have them come on and talk about it.
Yeah, and I think I just want to add like the vast majority of the people that get spoken to or who reach out in our customer development pipeline, they're video first, not Web3 distributed infrastructure, cryptocurrency. It's just they have the need for video transcoding, and that's great because we can meet it and we can do it affordably. And just finding out how to provide them an interface with familiar terms, like video ingestion, video playback, US dollars, things like that. Getting them to use our network in terms that are familiar to them, meeting them where their needs are to drive demand onto the public network is pretty much the approach we're taking. So yeah, I think it's for a lot of those customers, we'll be slowly introducing them to the idea of paying with cryptocurrency. And for some people, they'll never pay with cryptocurrency. LivePeer Inc. will always pay on their behalf after they've paid in a centralized currency. Yeah. Still with the goal of transcoding and driving demand on the public network. Wow. That's been a learning for me since I joined, this past summer. Yeah.
Right, and I'd say that all makes sense. I just wonder if these people would be interested to know that there's more depth going on in this community around governance, and we haven't talked barely about cryptocurrencies at all on this call. So
fair enough.
I think there's a lot of, and we've talked a lot about video infrastructure and milestones and achievements. I don't know, obviously I just think it would be useful for everyone.
Yeah, good.
I think that'd be really cool.
Suggestion. I think, we should have a section or a whole call focused more on bridging the gap, if you will, bridging the gap from video users into a LivePeer world and finding out the mutual points of interest. Cool. Time-wise, we're at the top of the hour here, so we'll end. I thank everyone for taking an hour to join the community call today. We have this recorded. We'll put it up online so we can share it out later. And next month, I think we have a topic call that Nelson is running, which will actually be focused on one of the big governance questions that's coming up, which is potentially updating the economic incentives that exist in LivePeer in order to keep this network bootstrapped prior to significant scale demand. So this means, the community coming to agreement on decisions like, do we need to move any parameters around, participation rate targets, the floor for inflation, timelines for the inflationary schedule, these sorts of things. And there's no proposals yet. There's no solidified ideas thrown out, but that's something that's going to be coming up in the next 6 months. And so I think that'll be a good and interesting call. And if people have thoughts, they should get in touch with me, with Nelson, and we'll be prepared to discuss that next time. So thanks everyone for joining, and we'll talk soon.